Hi guys, and welcome to OG Cars, and in today's video we're doing quite an exciting one because we've got not the first generation, not just the second generation, but all three generations of Fiat Panda. So let's show you them here today. Okay, so we're going to start where it all began with Gen 1. Now this is Pandino, my very first Fiat Panda. I've had it for over 8 years now as well.
And the Gen 1, as Owen said, is where it all began. This came out in 1980 now. Obviously, if you're going on Mark 1, this car is a Mark 2. But the Generation 1 is the most successful Fiat Panda. We had a little look online just before this, and they've sold over 7.8 million Fiat Pandas. But of that, 4.5 million of them were the Generation 1.
Okay, so I'll try not to start too much of a debate because there has been a bit of debate around this between Mark 1 and Mark 2. The Mark 1 is the 141, the Mark 2 is the 141A. Now, this is still first generation. It's fundamentally very similar to the Mark 1, but shares almost no parts apart from like the windscreens. Even the windows, the quarter light glass is different. There's so many changes between Mark 1 and Mark 2. I'd love to do a Mark 1 versus Mark 2 video at some point, so that can be an argument for another time in a whole different video. But firstly, in this video, we're just going to show you Gen 1, Gen 2 and Gen 3.
And now you join us with the Gen 2, and I was going to say this is my lovely Penny, but as you may know, we now share this as our daily car, so this is mine and Owen's Gen 2 Fiat Panda 169 Penny.
And the 169 was introduced in about 2003, and it was received really well in the UK as well. It took over from Gen 1 production when that ended in 2003. Obviously the UK didn't get the Gen 1 until 2003. It was only Italy that had it that late because we had the Punto and stuff that sold really well in the late 90s. But this took off really well in the 2003 period and was produced until about 2012 when the Generation 3 started taking over from it. And as the Gen 1 did, sold really well.
And last but not least, you join us with the Gen 3, and massive thank you to my mum who has let us borrow her car, and I hope you're enjoying your holiday in Spain, and this is what we're doing with your car whilst you're on holiday. So
this is the Gen 3, basically the Mark 4, and it was introduced to replace the Gen 2 in roughly 2012. There was a bit of a crossover period, so I may have got that very slightly wrong, but you see a lot on the same plate around that time, and it's been made ever since. Now obviously the Grande Panda, which will be the 4th generation Panda Mark 5, is coming later this year, so I'm assuming that this will be set to end production later this year, but at the moment it is still in production since 2012, so it's been, what, 13 years? Yep. So very good run.
So we've got all three generations here for you guys today, so what we wanted to do is compare them and see how they are stacked up against each other, I guess, and I think we've got quite a good knowledge base and experience to compare them, would you say? I'd
say so. In this video we just want to sort of share our thoughts and feelings on them, don't we, and sort of just show them off, show you guys what they're like. And between us we've owned 25, we counted earlier, and I've owned 15 Mark 2s and 3 of the Mark 3s, so I've owned a fair few myself, and you've owned obviously.
Yeah, I've owned more Mark Generation 2s, such as Penny, purely because that was my second car, so I've had more of those. But yeah, I'd like to think that we can hopefully give you guys a good idea on all of these cars and maybe help one of you guys decide which one of these might be the best for you.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of it on all these three cars, we just wanted to share a quick story, actually. I say a quick story, it might be a little bit longer than a quick story, but G's going to tell this one, and it's actually about your mum, isn't it? She's owned all 3 generations of Fiat Panda, so you just want to mention all of those and how it got you into this.
Yeah, absolutely, because ultimately my mum is the reason I ended up with Fiat Pandas, because she gave me her Mark 3 Fiat Panda at the time, which was a 58 Panda. We'll go into it in a second, but yeah, she owned a Generation 1 Fiat Panda as one of her first cars. I don't know which one it was, but she owned a white CLX, I believe. The only thing she can remember is it was white and it had a sunroof, and she's pretty sure it had a CLX sticker on it, so we'll go with that. But a funny story, and one of the only ones she can really remember about her Fiat Panda is the garage story, which Owen loves, everyone loves it when I tell him, is that these weren't worth anything back in the day. So she parked it in her garage, bless her, she looked after it, and one day someone broke into the garage and crawled over the Fiat Panda to steal the lawnmower instead of stealing the Fiat Panda that was literally right at the front of the garage. So if that gives you an idea of how these really have rised in notability, especially in the UK, then that surely does give it. But a few years later, about 2013, 2014 I think it was, she went out and bought a Generation 2, or Mark 3 as I said. It was a 58 plate 1.1 active, which actually still lives very close to us, so we still get to see it all the time when we go to see her. She ended up with it because it was bright orange and she wanted a Fiat Panda again. She did actually, funny story, look at 100 horsepower just before this, but tax was a bit more lower on petrol, a bit too jazzy for her. So she went with the active because, you know, they got the plastic bumpers. It's just a very basic car and she absolutely loved it. And the only reason she ended up getting rid of it was because of me, because I learned to drive in it and I really liked the car. She ended up giving it to me, bless her, and she went out and bought herself a Ford Fusion, I think it was at the time. And the only reason she bought the Ford Fusion was because she saw it as a big Panda. It's literally the reason she gave us for going for this Ford Fusion. Going down the line a few years later though, I think she had a Citroen C3 after that, she had a Renault Modus, but we ended up finding her this exact car that you see right here.
So we move on to the Gen 3 Mark IV again, and she had the Citroen C3 Picasso at the time. It was that sort of strange dark red coloured one, and it just got through the MOT. It needed a few bits for it. She knew it was going to need a bit more at some point, and to be honest, she was thinking of changing up car anyway for something slightly newer. That was a 60 plate. Obviously this one I believe is a 63 plate, so what, 2012, 2013, one of the earlier Mark IVs, and it came up locally. It's a Cat S, so yes, it is an insurance write-off, but it had really good service history, a lot of work done, and I thought, you know what, let's go and check it out. I did work even for Fiat for 6 years, and I worked at Nathaniel's down the road at the time from where this car was, so I went down, had a look at it, and you know what, it's really good. And she can't fault it, can she? She's had it for a few years now and it's done her really well, so my my inspection skills were just about up to scratch.
Yeah, exactly. And as Owen said, she's had literally no problems at all with it. The only thing that she's noted on it is the aircon, but ultimately she could have got that regassed, and also the infotainment, and we've done a video previously on that. We have actually upgraded that for her. In her words, it's like a new car.
Yeah.
So that change made it all for her. But as we said, reliability really good. When she had the 1.1 active, really good, and she said she never remembers any issues with the CLX. So for anyone who says fix it again tomorrow,
living proof. Testament to their reliability.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start with a little practicality test. Now, you need to have the knack to open these boot locks normally. Luckily, this one, yeah, not too bad. So the answer is, can you fit a Georgina in the boot? And the answer is, yes, you can. Is it comfortable?
No! Now, practicality test on the Fiat Panda 169, and if you haven't guessed it already, can you fit Owen in the boot?
Oh, just about, but I'm getting older. Oh.
Is it comfortable?
No, probably not, because as the boot shut, the rear wiper nut hit my knee, which kind of hurt a little bit.
Great. And lastly, the Gen 3, which also has a full-sized Owen in the boot.
Now that one was much better. No damage to my knee, and my leg doesn't feel like it's imploded this time. So practicality gets better with every model.
Whilst we're on the topic of practicality, obviously the Generation 2 and the Generation 3 do much better because they've both got 5 doors instead of 3 on the Generation, so it's a lot easier for people to get in and out of the back, as we just demonstrated.
Okay, so yes, this is a 3-door, but admittedly I've still got enough leg room in the back. Obviously you just lift the seat forward and jump in the back. This is set for me as well, and I'm not that tall, but I'm not short either, so I've still got plenty of leg room. I could get another adult next to me fine. Obviously there's a little bit of boot room as well, so practicality, still not bad. We had 5 up with G's family in a 4x4 Sizzly once, and that was a bit of an experience. 3 adults in the back is definitely a bit more of a squeeze. Okay, so running costs is actually a hard comparison because they're all pretty good, especially when you get an injection model like this Mark II. They're all very similar. They're all going to get give or take 50 mpg, maybe very slightly less on the older 1 litre that's working a bit harder than the 1.2 fires. On the later cars, you can get like the twin air, you can get the diesel. All these engines are going to have different MPGs and running costs, so I won't go too much into all of those. Obviously the diesel's going to get better running costs, and the later Gen 2 and Gen 3 do get cheaper tax and therefore cheaper to run that way, but the Mark 1 and Mark 2 Generation 1 tend to get cheaper insurance, so it probably just about counteracts. So running costs, there's not that much in it, but either way, none of them cost the earth.
So, price point. The great thing about a Fiat Panda is that they are actually all really easy to obtain. They're all cheap. This one we did get very lucky on for the mileage. We only paid £1,000 for this car in the end, and I do admit that is a good price for what this model is. But my mum's Generation 3, we actually only paid £2,500 for that, and that was 2 years ago now. So these are cheaper examples of Fiat Pandas, and you can go out and buy a very new Fiat Panda, one of the special editions, and there's still some of them commanding 5 figures. So, you know, you can get a more expensive one. Same with these, you can go out and buy a 100 horsepower model. They are appreciating, but you can also get a very cheap version of this. But if we talk about the Generation 1, prices on those vary a lot. Owen only paid £1,000 for Pandino there, but you are talking that's 8 years ago. I paid less than £1,000 for Charmander back in the day as well. But those are now sort of going up to the £2,000 mark, I would say, for a decent example. If you want a sizzly, you could be talking 5 figures for one of those as well.
So let's talk about popularity now. Well, the Generation 1 is becoming very popular, especially in Italy. You're looking at, you know, almost all of the like 4x4s that have ever been produced seem to still be going. Obviously they don't tend to have the rust bug that we've had over here, and obviously that's killed off a lot of the Gen 1s for us in the UK, but the popularity of the ones that are left is actually really high now. There's a lot of demand for these cars, the prices are going up. Obviously the Gen 2 and Gen 3 I'll let you talk about a little bit, but obviously they're not in that sort of sought after classic section yet, are they? But they're obviously still like a really good cheap car, and they're still a bit of fun, there's still a bit of character to them.
Yeah, we were talking about this because popularity wise I think we can use Pandino as a great example, because 90% of the cars there are a Generation 1. There are mainly a Mark 2, there's a few Mark 1s there, which is amazing to see, but I think the Generation 2 is getting to that point where it is starting to get popularity, especially for someone who wants a cheap runaround like we did when we ended up buying this. Especially though the 100 horsepower,
Yeah.
They are so sought after now.
Yeah.
Obviously we've done a video on this before, but you know, finding a good example can be a little bit hard with them being from the UK. But the 100 horsepower is really sought after, and what we find with the Generation 2 is actually the community is really good. Like, we can post a photo of this, let's be fair, it's just a basic Fiat Panda being the eco, there's nothing special about it, but you will get loads of help in the community channels and stuff. Fiat Panda UK is a great one. You've got a 4x4 Fiat Panda 4x4 UK, another fantastic group.
UK Panda 4x4, they've got a YouTube channel, they've got obviously the Facebook page, you've got Fiat Panda Classic Owners Group UK. There's so many groups that cater for these. Fiat Forum, there's still, you know, Fiat Forum sort of dying down a little bit obviously with the takeover of Facebook and stuff, but there's still some really good help out there and guides on Fiat Forum as well. Like when I did an engine change on my Fiat Panda, I wouldn't have the slightest clue of what I'm going to do with the wiring, but somebody on Fiat Forum has done it and they've put everything on there. People just help each other out, and if you've got problems you can just post them in a group and people will help you. So the community really is there for all of these cars.
And speaking on that community thing, if we also look towards the Generation 3, that car isn't cut out. When we bought that, everyone was really helpful for us. When we did the screen change, we made a video of it obviously for the channel, but we also put it on there, and we've helped a few people out into getting Apple CarPlay and Android into their car. I can't remember what it's called, Android Auto, whatever
Android
it's called.
Auto, yeah.
But that's the great thing about the Panda community. You go to Pandino and you're not just going to see that. You're going to see these. You're going to see these. In fact, we saw a few editions of the Generation 3 that we'd never heard of and thought, that's actually really cool. So
4x4 40 degree.
4x4
that was like,
40.
I can't remember what it was for. It was like 40 years of the
40 years of the Fiat
was it
Panda.
40 years of the Fiat Panda, something like that. And
So-
I just think it's incredible that the different models you get. That's the other thing, isn't it? Special editions, and even thought to mention that even from the Gen 1 all the way through to the Gen 2 and Gen 3, you have so many different models you can get. So there's a lot of individuality with these cars as well.
The community is fantastic. It's one of the most friendly communities out there. Like, you can join some groups, and I'm not going to stick anyone in this because I've not been in any unfriendly groups in particular, don't get me wrong, but I have friends in the Fiat Panda group who I've been friends with from the start, and ultimately that's how me and Owen met, was through a Panda community group in 2 Gen 1 Fiat Pandas. That's how me and Owen met, was through those groups, and Owen being really helpful to me when I owned Betty. But
Hopefully another video to come on that
another
in the
video to come
distant
on
future.
that. But yeah, ultimately that's how me and Owen met. He came to that meet through Facebook. He helped me with Betty while he was there in Pandino. It's the first time I met Owen was with Pandino, and ultimately that's how we ended up together. So if that doesn't tell you how cool Fiat Pandas are, is that that's how we ended up together.
Yeah.
I don't know what else will.
It's a strange addiction, isn't it? But ultimately, people in the Fiat Panda world do get it, and that's why we say the community and popularity is definitely right up there now. So from the far end down there, 1980, the car that was going to be called the Fiat Rustica, designed by Giugiaro, ended up becoming the Fiat Panda and becoming such the famous and popular car that it is today, spawned all of these other generations, and is still being produced to this day and still spawning new Panda models. It's just interesting to see how, you know, other car names have come and gone. You know, Uno and Punto, they've come and gone. Those names are no longer with us, but Panda still remains a constant.
And speaking on that, what we wanted to do is just sort of give you our opinions on all of them. Now, I know you can only just see it, but I think it's quite obvious which gen is mine and Owen's favourite. It is obviously going to be Generation 1, the Mark 1 and the Mark 2. We adore those cars. We've had some of our best memories in those cars, and ultimately they are going to be our favourites. If you have more than 2 people and a tiny corgi, probably not the most practical of cars, but we have so much fun in them. There's the classic appeal to them. I'm sure you'd agree with that opinion.
Absolutely. I think, as you say, the classic appeal of the Gen 1 is what puts it up there for me. But if we spin this a little bit and say, what would I want to daily now? I would say the 169. Now, admittedly, I do still occasionally daily drive the 141, and there is no problem with that. The 141A is a very capable car, especially the later injection ones tend to have no issues, or very little. But the 169, you know, it's a car that is very cheap to buy, very cheap to tax, and still fairly cheap to insure. Obviously, that's what, 35 quid a year for the road tax, which is obviously a lot cheaper than the 141A is at this point. But yeah, as I say, Gen 1 favourite, but the best and cheapest daily is going to be the Gen 2. But if you want something modern,
well,
then
this is where
you can look at the Gen 3.
Just quickly touching on the point Owen made, that's why I bought this, right? And Owen was jumping from 90s retro to 90s retro, and we both hit a point where we just want a daily car. So a fun fact for all of you, before we bought this car, we nearly bought I nearly bought a Generation 3. It was a beige Fiat Panda, and we went to drive it. We absolutely loved it, but when I had all the issues with the Saxo, obviously I had to get the Saxo for its MOT, that sale fell through. And if that sale hadn't fallen through, we would be both using a Generation 4. We do really like these
Gen
cars.
3, Mark 4.
Apologies, I'm getting confused with marks and generations.
I'll admit, it is quite hard to, and a lot of people do get that mixed up, so we'll cover Mark 1 versus Mark 2 another time.
This is, obviously that's why we do still have a soft spot for the Generation 3. We did we're very close to owning one of these, and if that sale hadn't fallen through, I'm sure we would have that car to this day, but ultimately it did mean we got Penny, and we do really love Penny, and that is exactly why you ended up going, I'll give you half of what you paid for it. So now we both own this car and we both daily drive this car. Yeah, it's racking the miles on it, but when you've only paid £1,000 for a car, it's not a lot of money, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, but as I was basically touching upon, the Gen 3, the older ones are getting cheaper, and they are actually coming to that point where they're a good, cheap, usable daily car. And, you know, you can spend a lot more on a newer one, and it's going to be reliable. The newer ones are obviously going to have warranty and everything, and there's still going to be loads of fun. Obviously, the newer ones, you get the hybrid engines and stuff like that, whereas the older ones like this, the Fire Series engine, which, may I add, the Fire Series engine has been in since 1986 on the 141A, all the way through to this part.
Buy a Fire engine in your Fiat Panda.
Fire Series. It's our recommendation. This is our personal opinion. The Fire Series is the best engine. It's just easy to work on. It's reliable. The Twin Air is a good engine, but doesn't get as good economy as it says it does. They occasionally have timing chain head gasket issues, and the Uni Air modules occasionally go, and they are very expensive to sort when they do go. You know, if you do get head gasket on a Fire Series, it's super easy. Timing belts, super easy, stuff like that. Yeah, our recommendation is, sorry, I'm going on and on. Fire Series, I'm sorry guys, it's the best.
Obviously, we both really love Fiat Pandas, and the truth is we could just stand here and go on and on and on about them, but what we're going to do is we're going to cut it there. We hope this is helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, because the two of us do have a lot of knowledge on these cars. You know, they are running through our families, as we say. But yes, we are really happy we've been able to make this video for you guys. Thank you so much to my mum for letting us borrow her car. We've given it a clean for you, so when you get back from your holiday, she's nice and clean for you as well. But thank you very much for watching, guys, and we will see you all in the next one.